And with that, it's my extreme pleasure to introduce to you Justice Melanie May, who is the leader of problem-solving courts in the state of Florida. So welcome, Justice May.
Thank you, but you promoted me, so I'm just a judge.
Oh, I thought it was Judge May. Okay, all right. Well, thank you.
No.
But because I've been calling you Justice May for a while.
I know. I like it.
But it's a promotion you deserve, and our listeners should know you and I have history, don't we?
Good history.
We have very, very good history. And I don't want to steal your thunder because in a second I'm going to ask you just to talk about yourself. But I will just say that among part of your biography is you're a past chair of the board of directors at the National Association of Drug Court Professionals when I was on the board serving under you. So it's really a pleasure to get a chance to talk with you. But so really the first question is to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so from a judicial perspective, I was appointed to the bench in 1991 in Fort Lauderdale. And after about 4 years there in the delinquency division, the chief judge came to me and asked me if I would take over the felony drug court division, which is how I got involved in this movement and this wonderful revolution in justice. And I was there for 7 years. During the kind of the Neanderthal times, Mac, if you'll forgive me, things were just really getting started. I think our court was the second or third in the country. I did not start it, but I was the second drug court judge there. And then, as you mentioned, got very involved with the National Association of Drug Court Professionals. And about that same time, also started the Florida Association of Drug Court Professionals here in Florida. So we were moving and shaking back then, and we had lots of really exciting and new, innovative things to try out. And it was a great time to be there. And then my dream came true because I had always wanted to be on the Court of Appeals, and I was appointed to the Court of Appeals in 2001. So when I got the news, I was excited. And at the same time, I'm like, oh, what have I done now? I have to give up my drug court. So I had mixed feelings about that.
That's one of the reasons I think I've called you Justice, because when you go to the Court of Appeal in California, the title is Justice. Even so,
yes, they have a much bigger title.
Okay, but I was right though that you had been elevated to the Court of Appeal. So
yes, I've been there since 2002.
And I remember that. I actually remember that appointment. So that was an important part of the background. But can you tell us again, what year was that? What year did you first start the drug court? Or I know you said that you weren't the first judge, but what year did you go to take that calendar?
1995. So they began in 89. So I was 6 years into the first one. Dade County, just south of us, came up with the idea. And then we had a wonderful judge in our circuit that was in recovery and really motivated to start it. And he did. And then they switched me into that division.
Tell people, I think I have this right, but wasn't your drug court fairly large?
It was huge. When I left, I had.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, when I first went in 95, I had about 400 cases. And by the time I left in 2002, I had 1,800.
That's the number I remember. Because I remember when we started working together, that was you had probably the largest treatment court in the country without question. How you did that, I'll never know.
Well, back then we didn't know about screenings and status conferences and things that we know now, and we didn't know about risk and high risk and high need and all of that. So anybody that got charged with a drug offense, and in South Florida, that was a lot of people, had the option to come in.
Yes, it's such an important part of the history that I think a lot of current treatment court or drug court practitioners don't really know. And I think that you just did a really good job of pointing out in the beginning, there was a lot in the research in this field that we weren't using and weren't applying, but now we know so much more. Now, when you were going over your background, you also made reference to some more that we want to talk about. And you are the current president, or you're leading the Florida Association of Drug Court Professionals. Did I get that right?
That's correct. Yes.
But did I hear
So,
that you actually were a founder? Did you help start that?
yes, Judge Evans from the West Coast in Tampa and I were the two judges that got this up and running back in the late 90s. And it was really very successful in the fact that we had a lot of members, we had biannual conferences, and we were moving right along until probably the downturn of the economy in 2008. And that took kind of the wind out of our sails because the money dried up and nobody could afford to send anybody anywhere. And by that time, I was no longer chair. Don't remember who was. But so from 2008 forward, we tried to join with the Association of Treatment Counselors, FADA, they call it, the Florida Alcohol and Drug Abuse Association. So they'd have a conference, and then we would get a track in their conference and do our drug court thing there. But for many years, we really didn't get much done. And then the next time we had our own conference wasn't until 2019. So we really lost about 11 years.
Yeah, I understand that. So what was the impetus to start the association itself? What was, I know that you just described starting it, but what were the goals? What was the vision when the association started?
Okay, well, I think first Judge Evans and I tried to get our Supreme Court, and we were successful in doing that, to create a task force so that we could get the kind of stamp of approval of the higher court. Because, as you know, these were grassroots courts that grew up really locally, and there was really no organization. I mean, when I look at new drug court judges coming in, they just have the wealth of information and research and how to do it and all the trainings. There was none of that back in my day and your day, right?
Exactly.
Back in the 90s.
Right.
So then when we went to the national, we saw they were encouraging states to create their own associations. And so that really was probably what lit the fire. And then we got ourselves together, and we could then get Corrections, Department of Children and Families, SAMHSA, and other groups to give us money. And we put on our own conferences, and they were wonderful. Because, as you know, you always learn something when you go to a conference. It doesn't matter how much you know.
Without question, you always learn something. That's such a great point and such an endorsement to attend whenever you can. So you're continuing to have annual conferences now?
Well, we're just getting ready to plan our next one. So we motored on along from 2008 through 2019. We were able to get a state grant, or a grant from the federal government for the state to put on the first adult drug court conference we had in 11 years. And then, you know what happened after 2019? We got the pandemic in 2020, and that didn't help move things along. And so at the time, Jerry Beth Cohen, a judge from Miami, who I understand received the Stanley Goldstein Award, I believe, last year. She was very instrumental in dependency and family drug courts. So she was the chair.
She sat next to me on the board. I apologize. I didn't mean to speak over you. This is really for you to talk, so I apologize. Keep going.
No, she was the chair. And then she decided to retire, and she retired in 20. Mm-hmm. I have been the vice chair for as long as I've been involved, because I'm not in charge. I haven't been in charge for many years, but I'm always kind of the backup person. And so she retired in about in September, and then in the fall of 2020, I contacted our state court administrator's office, and I said, we need to get ourselves organized. And so we selected a new drug court judge that was kind of an up-and-comer who now is a mentor court, and asked her if she would, serve as chair, and she didn't even know we existed. So it was kind of interesting to learn after all these years, we didn't do a very good job of reaching out and bringing in new people. We kind of, fell apart because we didn't have any transition planning. So I found myself as chair again. So, 20 years later, here I am, getting it back up and running. But I have a vice chair. I have transition planning now,
Excellent.
and he's about to take over next year. So,
Well, what's your as chair the second time around? What's your vision for the association as you move forward? What kinds of things do you
well,
want to accomplish?
yeah, I would like us to kind of return to the heydays when we really had an organization that could really support the workforce and the teams that are out there. And we're doing a lot of things. We started even in 21, I think, doing networking sessions and bringing in speakers and doing things by Zoom during the pandemic. And so we've got almost a couple hundred members now. So we've gone from virtually nothing back to 200 or close to it. And we're continuing to grow, and we're planning on a statewide conference in 24, which that's the thing that makes everybody energized and going. So that I think that's going to be a very important accomplishment for us.
Outstanding. And you answered a couple of my questions with that. So yeah, obviously it is membership. So you do have membership, and I was curious about the
Yes.
membership. And did I hear you have a couple of hundred members right now?
Yeah, I think it's like 170 something. It's not quite 200, but considering we had virtually nobody a couple of years ago, I'm very happy that we have this number now and growing. It's up from last year. So I know we're making a difference.
Have you set any kinds of numeric goals in terms from a membership standpoint relative to the number of problem-solving courts in the state?
I think I personally would like to see every drug court be a member. I don't think that has been achieved yet. So our outreach is going to be important, but that's why I think the conference will be so significant, because if you give them give us a venue where they can network and learn and meet each other, then I think that will really enhance membership as well.
Okay, I appreciate that. Now, from that standpoint, and with your goals and visions from the association, how do you think the problem-solving courts in Florida can be improved? What are some of the things that you would really like to see occur in terms of improvements in those courts?
Okay, so one thing I'd like to point out for you is, in the old days, we had to explain what a drug court was when we went to the legislature. We had to, kind of educate people, and that's no longer so. But back at the same time, right around 2008, when we got the stimulus dollars that came down from the federal government, fortunately for me, I was very good friends with someone who chaired the Criminal Justice Committee in the House. And the $10 million that came, or $20 million that came down for criminal justice, she gave to the drug courts.
Oh my goodness.
And so, yes, and that was a huge thing. So we needed to come up with some way of having a project for that. So we created post-adjudicatory drug courts. So these are people who are more the high risk, high need, obviously, because we know that's the target population. But they're also people who've been to prison and back. And so we took the money, we set up programs, we got jurisdictions to pilot it. Not every jurisdiction has one. I think that should be one of our goals, because in fact, the judges, I did not have the good fortune to be on the bench when we had those, but the judges who have served have told me that those are the most rewarding people that they work with, because these people have been in prison maybe multiple times. So they just have to be charged with a nonviolent crime, and they don't get their charges dismissed. So they don't have that kind of carrot, but they really want to get their lives together. So they come into this post-adjudicatory drug court, and that's happening. And from that, then our legislature did a study to see if we were successful with the use of those monies. And the good news was, yes, we were. And so now we have close to a $10 million a lump sum that the legislature now gives us each year to help support the drug courts around the state.
One of my questions was going to be a significant accomplishment that you might be proud of for the association, for the courts. I think you just described it. So that provides the opportunity for recurring 10 million each year.
Yes.
That is outstanding. Congratulations to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Particularly,
Our biggest problem now, though, is because of the pandemic, it's very hard for the jurisdictions to spend the money. They put in a request for need, but they've got to hire people, and nobody wants to work anymore. And and other like logistical problems with supply and so forth. So what we need to make sure we do is have our problem-solving courts spend the money that's been allotted to them, or the legislature won't keep giving it to us.
Yeah.
So that's one. Yeah, that's a big issue.
So we're kind of winding down now. Judge May, I still want to say Justice May, but is there anything else you'd really like to? You have this platform, you have this stage that you'd like to tell the audience about the association that you're leading, or about problem-solving courts in the state of Florida?
Yeah, there's two areas I'd really like to see us arrive at. One, our reentry courts. I've worked on that legislation for over 20 years. I got it passed in, I don't remember, I think it was 2012. The governor vetoed it. I think that's another way problem-solving courts can be useful in transitioning people with substance abuse and mental health issues out of the prison system. And the second is, I think there are a lot of aspects of problem-solving courts that can be very useful in mainstream judicial handling of things. Whether it's proactive judicial monitoring, or whether it's drug testing, or maybe the reward and sanction approach. And I think there are almost every division of the courthouse should be educated on those techniques. And I think it would improve outcomes.
You know what? You and I think completely alike on that. And in fact, even though this is your interview, I just want to say, I think that what you talked about when you're describing the role of the judiciary and leading with some of those initiatives in the greater criminal justice system, that's really criminal justice reform, in my opinion, because what it is taking principles that have been successful and then trying to apply them systemically, if you will. So it's not my time, but I was so impressed with that, and I just wanted to let you know I agreed with you. So I wish.
I'm glad you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
People that have been around, you and I've been around for a while. People can see that. So
absolutely. I mean, even a civil division, we taught a course one time at new judges school, and even the civil division judge said, I had somebody who had like a mental breakdown in their courtroom. I mean, so if you knew a little bit more about mental health, they would have been able to handle the situation better. So it can happen in any division.
Absolutely. Well, I actually don't have any more questions for you. But I have to tell you, I knew this was going to be enjoyable. And it's not only been enjoyable, it's been informative for our viewers. And I just really want to take this time right now to thank you again for taking time from your very busy schedule to spend these few minutes visiting with us. So,
well, Mac, it's been great seeing you. I remember the good old days. And, when I saw your name on my email, I'm like, oh my gosh, a voice and a name from out of the past. So thank you for inviting me. And hopefully FADCP will be able to help with some of these initiatives that I've mentioned.